Hi, everyone. Hi, y'all. Just waiting for my guest to join. There she is. Oh, Mayu, it's saying you need to update your version of the app in order to join the live stream. Did you get that, Mayu? Okay. All right. She's just gonna update her app, and then she'll join me in just a minute. As always, if y'all have any questions about English horn reeds, feel free to drop them in the comments. Not the wedding ring making an appearance. Oops, just casually sorting cane. You're so funny, LeBaron. There we are.
Hello.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. It's so good to see you.
Sorry. So good seeing you. Sorry about the update. I'm one of those people
Oh,
that forgets to update
yeah,
my phone and things like that.
that's okay. I do the same
But
thing, so no worries.
well, how are you?
I'm doing well. I just finished a recording gig, which was like my first gig in months, so it was nice to play with other people. Yeah. So
Definitely,
how's your day
yes.
been?
Good. I been relaxing a little bit. Kind of had a busy week with HGO this last week. So I kind of had a nice break yesterday, and so today's kind of back on the grind again, I guess.
Awesome. Yeah. Nice. Cool. Everyone's saying hi to you. They're all
I
glad you're
see that.
here. Love that. Well,
Yeah, it's great. Hopefully
yeah,
they.
yeah, I'm sure they will. Yeah. Well, everyone, thank you for joining in. Welcome to another episode of Meeting and Reading. My name is Logan Esterling, and our guest this week is Mayu Isom. She's the second oboist and English hornist of the Houston Grand Opera and Houston Ballet Orchestra. She's performed with many other orchestras, including San Antonio Symphony, the Amarillo Symphony, and the Chautauqua Symphony. And she's performed in a variety of summer music festivals such as Spoleto, Music Academy of the West, and NRO. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited to chat about English horn reeds.
Yeah, I do. I hopefully will be enlightening to some people as well as myself too. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's jump into it, and let's start with the cane brand that you use and the gouge that you use.
I guess well, it feels recent, but it was at the beginning of this pandemic. So
Nice.
a little bit with that with my, but I use
Yeah,
Regatti just directly from France. Um,
nice.
but I actually use cane colleague. Her name is Michelle Pan. She has a store called Reading Rainbow, and I buy her gouge
Yeah,
cane, and I kind of always have, and I've really loved it.
yeah.
Her cane source is secret, so I don't actually know where it's from, but I've always
I
loved
love
it.
that.
Um, I definitely recommend checking her out. I know that her store is closed right now for the summer, so she'll be open back in September, but I highly recommend her cane. She's also an English horn player herself, and I really love using her cane for myself.
Awesome. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm curious, with the Inaletti, are you using the English horn Inaletti?
No, I'm actually using my oboe one, but I'm gouging it in a way that's basically set to a wider setting. So I'm kind
Nice.
of fixing around with it a little bit. It's still very new, and I'm not really messing with because of for work purposes. So that's more my personal until I feel a bit more comfortable with that.
Nice. Yeah, I may have to connect with you after this show and pick your brain about that because I've been curious about trying that with my oboe Inaletti gouger. So cool.
Yes,
Um,
I think I heard that from Anish, which I know you've
oh,
interviewed in the
yeah,
past. So
nice.
yeah,
That's
he's
awesome.
great about that.
Yeah, cool. All right, what about your staple and shape?
So I'm pretty simple. Staples, I've always kind of used Glutan. Doesn't matter if it's brass or silver for me.
Mhm.
I do have a lot of silver ones, but I also do use brass, especially if I'm selling them. It's just a little, a little more cheaper. But
Yeah,
sometimes I use the MSA also if I'm making student reads for that as well. I find them to be pretty reliable. And then in terms of shape, I actually weirdly enough, I've only used the Coelho shape. It just happens to be the one that was recommended to me, and then I also started to make reads on it, and I kind of just never ventured out. I've been wanting to try, um, and I've been waiting to see some of my other friends who play English horn and try to use their shape and experiment a little bit with it, but I have not gotten around to it obviously since the pandemic. So I'm hoping
yeah,
once I see them again, I could try different shapes then.
nice. Yeah, I've been really curious about the Coelho for a while. When I
Yeah,
first
I love it.
yeah, when I first started playing English horn, those were like that was the shape that I would when I would buy reeds, that's what they were, and I loved them. And then when I first
Hmm.
started making my own, I switched to an RDG1, which is on the wider end, and now I'm
Mm-hmm.
using the Cymer Diaz. So yeah,
Nice. Yeah. I've heard good things about them. Yeah, I unfortunately have not tried out very many, but I've always found the Quello to be super reliable, especially with the upper register. So I've just stuck with
yeah,
it.
nice. Which can be such a problem on English horns.
Very
Yeah,
much so.
yeah, definitely. Cool. And then let's see. I'm also curious about your vocals. That's something specific to
Mm,
English. Yeah.
yes, definitely. I am a huge, huge fan of Hinneker vocals. I only own one at the moment, but when I would, for example, like if I was renting an English horn, I'd always ask for a Hinneker, and
Nice.
I'd always find at least one that I would like. And it's always been one that it has a, to me, I feel like it has a nice, bulky, robust kind of tone to it, and at the same time still has stability in the upper register.
Nice.
Um, I've never really been a fan of the Lorray vocals that come with the instrument. I just find them to be a little bit too, yeah, a little unreliable, a little too narrow sounding, and kind of sharp on the left-hand notes.
Yeah.
So I've just big Hinneker fan, definitely. I use a Hinneker, I believe is a B12, yes. So
Okay, cool. Nice. Yeah, I'm trying out. I have a 2B11, which I like. I'm trying out 2B11.5s, and I might try a 12 as well. So they're really great vocals.
yeah.
Yeah. And I've
Hmm.
experienced
Yeah,
this.
it's like once I tried one, I couldn't go back.
Right. Yeah. No, they're great. I'm also a big fan of the Cymer vocals. I have two of those, and I switch between those depending on what I'm playing. Yeah.
Hmm.
Cool.
Yeah, those
And
are
what?
nice too. I don't personally own one, but I've tried them.
Yeah. Yeah. What kind of horn are you playing?
I'm just playing on a standard Lorray English horn. I bought it
Nice.
in the fall of 2019. Um, Kind of, broke it in slowly, and then we had the pandemic. So I've been playing on it since then, but it's been great. Um, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I play on a standard Luray as well, and I love it. Yeah,
Hmm.
awesome. Well, we had quite a number of submitted questions this week, as you saw. Um,
Yes,
yeah, so let's dive into some of them.
definitely.
So the first one that we got was, what is your finished length for English horn reeds?
So, my finish length, depending on um, the time of year, for example, I live in Houston, so sometimes it could be super humid.
Yeah,
And so I can get away with a reed that's a little bit longer. And sometimes if I'm playing somewhere dry, the reed's a little bit shorter. So I generally
yeah.
finish a reed anywhere between 56 and 58 millimeters.
Okay, nice.
When I tie it, it's about 59 to 60. So it kind of depends on where exactly I tie that reed specifically.
Gotcha. Nice. Yeah, I'm quite similar. I do 55, 57, somewhere in there. Yeah, and it also
Yeah.
depends somewhat on the shape that I'm using too.
Mm,
Yeah,
right. Definitely.
yeah.
Nice. All
Cool.
right.
Nice. Next question. If you use wire, which I assume you do, but if you do, when
Yeah.
do you put it on?
Um, so I have always put it on right after I'm finished tying the blank, and my thought process behind that is just you want to get the reed to kind of be, you're settling it down because you just had it as a piece of cane gouged, right? And so you're trying to get it to be shaped around the tube. So my fear is that if I put the wire after it's settled down, I don't want to be choking the reed too much.
Yeah.
Um, so I put it on right after I tie the blank. I tie it or tighten the wire just enough so it's kind of snug on there, but it's not obviously, too tight. And
Yeah.
then I actually put the wire, I don't try to shove up the wire too high up on the reed. And I kind of just let it sit kind of in between the middle of the thread and where the back starts.
Okay.
And I kind of just don't fuss with it ever since then. Yeah.
Nice. So around like 4 millimeters or something above the wrap.
Yes. Yeah. It's usually around 4 to 5 millimeters. I never put the wire where the back is. So it's
Yeah.
always right around where the back starts. And it's still kind of in that barky area of the
Nice.
reed.
Cool. I tend to put mine on like the very last thing I do, but I'm really curious to try putting it on right after I tie. I don't think I've ever really tried that. So I'll have to give that a shot. Yeah. And
Yeah.
what is your like
Yeah.
main purpose for using wire? Which is kind of a loaded question, but
Yeah, I have been told by prior teachers that putting on the wire is for stability in the higher register, and I
yeah,
actually know of some other players that don't use like they normally use wire, but they don't use a wire when they know they're playing something in the lower register, like let's say like three-cornered hat, kind
yeah,
of that low solo. That the wire can actually kind of make it a little bit more difficult. Um,
it- yeah,
I have not really experimented with that as much. I've kind of always put a wire. I find the other thing that's nice about it is it kind of gives more body to the reed. And it's kind of a trick because, I don't want to put a wire in a way that's like, oh, I'm opening the reed up more because that's not what the wire is for, in my
right.
personal opinion. But there is a quality of it that does make it feel a little bit more open and more robust about it.
Yes, I totally agree. Yeah, allows you to like just give it a little bit more air and fill it up more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of like can weirdly like continues the spine or something. I'm not quite sure exactly, but that's what
Yeah.
it feels like to me. And so it really gives it a nice stability and kind of bulkiness at the same time.
Nice. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I'm super curious about the idea of like it continuing the spine. I like that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Cool. And then one question that we didn't really get, but that I'm curious about is just your general process for making English horn reeds.
Um, in terms of like the length, I guess, or
Yes, yeah, like day by day, what do you do?
yeah. So it's when I make English horn reads, they're definitely a lot longer than my oboe reads. I, I'll start with the gouge piece. I shape it, tie it just enough so it peeps a little bit. I'm really not even much of a crow, maybe a little one. And then I put the wire on, of course. And then I let it sit for at least a day, maybe even two. And then I pretty much take about a week to finish my reeds. And so I kind of
Yeah.
scrape a little bit. This part's similar to oboe reeds where you scrape a little bit with the tip. Transition. I really don't touch the back very much unless it's towards the very. Um, and then I basically try to break it in, not nothing crazy, but just enough. I play, depending on what rep I'm playing, or if I'm just making a read for somebody else, I kind of play the major stuff a little bit high, a little bit low. Letting it settle is the most important part because it's a thicker piece of cane, so it naturally needs more time to kind of settle down into its new environment.
Yeah. I've definitely found that to be true with my English horn reeds as well. Yeah, that helps so much. Yeah.
And they last longer, which is of course always a plus. So
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Anything to make them last longer is worth doing. Yeah. Um,
definitely.
cool. So another question we had was how do you manage the overlap? Which I guess this also can apply to oboe reeds as well. But how do you manage it so that it doesn't get too overlapped?
Yeah, so I pretty much view it the same way as oboe reeds. Um, you have your staple, which is kind of an oval shape, and you want the two pieces of cane to essentially, once you're done clipping it, to be flush with the oval or parallel, right? So before I clip it, obviously when I'm tying it, I want my piece to look down the tube. I want it to be a little bit like 10 o'clock and 4 o'clock. So shift it
Yeah.
a little bit to the right because when you clip it, it's naturally to the left.
Yeah.
Is what fixes my overlap. Now, when I have students that come to me saying that they have, oh, my overlap's too big, usually the two culprits are that they weren't checking to see where it's on the tube. So maybe it's a little bit already to the left or it's way too far to the right. And so because it's not sitting flush onto the tube, it's going to sit at a funny angle. And that's what's going to cause that bigger overlap. Noticed is clip, and I'm not sure if people know that terminology, but essentially when you're shifting the two pieces of cane, you want them to be moving simultaneously. But
Mm.
side slipping means that you're only moving one piece of cane. So it could be just the bottom or the top. And so if
Mm.
you move just, let's say, the top one over, obviously then it's not going to be parallel with each other. And
Yeah.
that's going to cause a funny overlap too.
Nice. Yeah. That's great advice. Yeah. I also find that when I'm tying, I want, the overlap to be as minimal as possible, right? And then once it's done,
Mm-hmm.
then, you can increase it just a little bit, right? So that way it doesn't go
Right,
crazy on you.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. I really don't twist it on the tube. I really barely move it over. Like it's really only just like 1 hour on the clock.
Yeah.
I always think less is more for things like that, especially.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Awesome. Um, and let's see, another question we had. What type of wire is best?
I have been going back and forth between two, and so I prefer one right now, but who knows what I'll feel maybe in a year or so. I initially had started off with a silver nickel uh, wire, and the gauge was I think 24. It's on the thinner side.
Okay.
I did like it initially, but I found it to be a little bit too flimsy, and it
Oh,
didn't really give the nice kind of support that I would like for my English horn reed openings and things like that. So I actually switched over to the brass wire, which is 26 gauge.
nice.
And at first, I thought, well, maybe it's a little thick, maybe it's a little too thick, but I've really come to love it. It really gives a nice support to my reeds. Um, but I might experiment with some other ones. But for now, that's what I'm using for all my reeds.
Nice. Okay, cool. Yeah, I use brass wire that's 28 gauge. So similar. Yeah.
Oh, nice, great,
Yeah.
yeah. I haven't tried that, so I'll have to do a 28 gauge at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I need to experiment more with it. I do have some
Yeah.
nickel that I've tried a little bit, but not much. And have you
Mhm.
noticed, like you said, it provides a little bit more support? Have you noticed anything else with the changing of the wire?
Um, the only thing I noticed is just based on the thickness, and I don't know if it has to do with materials, and maybe I'm showing my ignorance in terms of types of
Yeah.
metal, but but I definitely felt like the silver nickel was it just felt like very flimsy. And again, I
Okay.
know it was a thinner gauge, so I don't know if that's also, the main part of that. But definitely, yeah, I just happened to switch to brass, and I haven't had an issue with it, so I kind of just haven't experimented outside of that, and I haven't gone back to silver nickel because of that. So that's
Nice.
pretty much it.
Nice. Cool. I'm also curious what you look for when you're sorting English horn cane. Obviously, it's very similar to oboe cane, right? So it's probably the same things. But what is it that you look for?
So far, and I'm still somewhat new to all of this English horn gouging cane stuff, so I
Mm.
don't have too much information. But what I know of right now, I buy the cane between 12 and 12.5 diameter. Um, I'm looking for specifically around 12. I don't like buying 11.5 to 12 just because I don't want it to be too open.
Yeah.
So I look for cane that's usually near around 12. I do like 12.5 diameter. 12 too small for me. So those are kind of pieces of cane that I'll save for a humid day in Houston.
Yeah.
So, but other
Nice.
than that, I kind of try to stay away from the smaller openings.
Nice. Cool. Right. Oh, did it disconnect?
Sorry, yeah. Let me see if I can try to connect to my, but I think it's okay. Okay. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry. Let me know if it disconnects or something.
Okay. Yeah. It seems okay right now.
Okay.
But I was curious about like your experience with. I know it gets very humid in Texas. What have you done to kind of combat that humidity
Oh
issue?
boy, it's still a journey, and both for English horn and for
Yeah.
oboe. Um, the funny part is it is very humid, and then we have the other side of the spectrum where you go into a super cold AC blasting room, and it ends up drying out your reeds too. So you kind of have
Right.
to play this charades of what's the
Yeah.
AC going to do today, you know. I will say that for Houston, the best thing that I have found is using older reeds, like reeds that are more settled. Whenever I use a super new read, it never really wants to function quite right, or it'll literally start changing on me during rehearsal, which is
Yeah.
kind of
I know.
not a fun game to play because you don't really know
Yeah.
what to expect.
Yeah.
Right. So I try to not adjust my new reads then. Like, I mean, if I'm playing a new read and let's say I am not liking it, rather than sitting there and adjusting it, panic, I just put it away. I take out an older read, and most likely that one's going to be set, ready to go. They have a lot of a longer lifespan here, which is great. And at that point they're settled because they've been, vibration. Definitely, yeah. More time is the best advice I could give.
Nice. Yeah, and I think that's great advice for all read making is the aspect of time because it feels so often like we're trying to rush through it, right? And just get a read that works. But time plays a
Hmm.
big factor in making the
Yes,
read
and
happen.
especially for English horn.
Yes. Yeah.
Hmm. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And Violin Bunny just asked, do you shape to the top or bottom of the ears on the Quelo shape?
I shape to the bottom.
Okay.
Um, the only shape that I do shaping at the top of the ears is my Mac Plus, but that's for oboe, which is unrelated. But
Yeah.
yeah, I shape at the bottom. Otherwise, it's too narrow in my opinion. I actually did that one time by accident because I don't know, I was not probably a late night read making, and
Yeah.
the read came out very weird. So
Okay.
I don't
Yeah.
personally recommend it.
Yeah. Nice. Cool. Let's see. Um, oh, and this has to something we've already covered, but
Hmm.
your favorite English horn shape, which you said is your Coelho.
Hmm.
I'd have to say mine is. I really do like the DS Cymer shape, but I keep getting drawn back to the RDG one. Again, it's wider, but I just something about that width I really enjoy playing on. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Another question: do you finish your English horn reads differently than you finish your oboe reads?
Yes. There are a lot of things that are similar to it, and I've actually people ask me this quite often. Oh, it's just like oboe reads, and it's like it is, and it isn't.
Right.
um,
Yeah.
one of the best pieces of advice I got was um, you want there's that you always want to take one more layer out of your English horn reed.
Mm,
In a sense that it's so easy that you want to leave it thick because it's already dark and it sounds
right.
full and everything. But the reality is that when you have a super dark reed on English horn, it actually comes in kind of stuffy.
Yeah. Mm,
Um, and so when I'm thinking of English horns, I want something that's a little bit warm, more on the bright side. And so that's one of the things that I view differently with oboe and English horn reeds. On the flip side of that, I also have to remember that I cannot scrape nearly as much on like the tip, for example, on an English horn reed because I want it to be thicker to
yeah.
have um, that same kind of quality. Because if you scrape it too thin, I'm sure you've encountered this by accident before, where it starts to sound really papery and kind of
Yeah.
spitty, and it's not a fun feeling. So
No, not at all.
that's definitely something. Right, exactly. So
Yeah.
I have to adjust to that, where it's like, okay, not scraping too much here.
Nice.
Um, I also definitely don't take as much out of the back. And that kind of goes back again to the whole wanting a reed that is going to be a little bit brighter. I don't need to scrape so much out of the back to find my depth, so to speak. I do need some, but not nearly as much, because otherwise it starts to be the reed becomes a little bit unreliable, especially in the upper register if the back is too thin.
Nice. Yeah, I love that approach. I think like the English horn is just naturally more deep and chocolatey, right, by nature. So the reeds don't
Right,
like make up so much, of that. Um, like like it feels like we need to do that on the oboe. Yeah, I like that a lot.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how has playing in the opera affected how you make reeds?
Um, well, I think this is true for anyone that goes from being a student to having a job. And I'm sure you can understand this, where it's, when you're a student, you kind of have a whole variety of stuff you have to play. Like you'll be in orchestra and then maybe
Yeah.
you'll have a master class or maybe you have a Baroque chamber thing. Like you have to
Yeah.
kind of have a read that does everything, right?
Yeah.
My biggest thing for when I started my job was that, well, one is that I'm playing second oboe. So most of the time I need a read that's going to be docile and soft and can play the low notes and the things that second oboe loves to do.
Yeah.
um, the other thing I've come to learn is that I cannot play the same read over and over and over, or even I don't even play the same read for the whole show quite often, especially because an opera is usually 3 hours minimum, same with ballet. So I will have reads that I know I can switch either between acts, or if I know that it's going to be um, like, let's say Aida, for example, there's the march scene, right? And so I use a much heavier, bulkier reed. This is for oboe.
Mm,
Because I know that I can kind of blow into it. The low notes are going to come out. I don't have to worry about, being too quiet or anything. If anything, they want more. And then I'll switch after that act. I'll switch to a much softer, lighter reed because it's all a lot of the, you know, two two people arias, very soft, very quiet. And so I have a reed that's much lighter, Not a powerhouse by any means, but I know is reliable, going to respond quickly and easily. Um,
Nice.
so that's, yeah, that, and then those reads also last longer, which is great. So then I can use those reads for at least a week, if not more, because I'm divvying up the reads.
Nice.
Um, English horn's kind of the same. I maybe I don't switch around with English horn as much depending on the repertoire, um, but it's kind of a similar boat where it's like, okay, I'm going to make a read based on what I'm performing. So if I know I'm playing in the upper register, I'm going to make sure that it's really nice and easy up there. Or if I'm playing in a lower register or a lot of articulated stuff, it just depends on the repertoire.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. I really like that as well. And I think like when we're in school, a lot of us are so scared to like to switch reads, right? Because it is scary because you don't
Hmm.
know if you don't, especially if you don't know your read well enough, then you never know what's going to come out. But I think as you know, we get more experience making reads and feeling more comfortable with how our reads are going to function, we can take that risk, of switching. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was scared at first too, and the wise words of my teacher, Mr. Frillo, was like, "You should probably do that, or you're gonna go
Yeah.
crazy." So I was like, "Okay." So
Yeah.
I take his advice to heart, definitely.
Yeah. And I love watching videos of him playing, and you'll see like, 6 to 10 reeds on his stand and on his little oboe desk. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's amazing that he has that much like control and understanding of his reeds that he can just, pick exactly which reed he wants for a specific thing. Um, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, he's great at that, and I am working towards that. Right, we all
Yeah.
are. So.
Yeah, same. Yeah. Awesome. Let's see. Oh, this one also relates to kind of different how the English horn is different than the oboe.
Mhm.
How do you approach playing the English horn differently than you play the oboe?
Um, there's quite a few things that are different. I, I guess we can go with the obvious one would be the pitch tendencies are different. Some of them it's the
Yeah.
same, like if your left hand higher notes are a little, you know as we call saggy or flat, right? That's very typical in English horn as it is on oboe, unfortunately. So that's one of
Yeah.
those things. But one of the other things that I was not used to was also the lower left hand notes, like A flat, A, even B flat, have a tendency to be a little bit on the higher side. They really want to creep up, and so that's took me a while to get used to it. Middle C, even though I know it's has a tendency to want to be flat on English horn, the thing that really kind of threw me off guard when I first started playing English horn was that it felt so open. Um, and you have to change your airspeed for that in a way that's a little bit different than oboe. It's still the same amount of focus and support, but you're physically just going to be blowing more air. And I mean, it makes sense because it's bigger, but it
Yeah.
just feels very odd at first. It's like, oh, okay, like I have to really kind of give it some power.
Yeah.
Um, One of the other different things I noticed is vibrato, and this is really easy to forget, especially if you're switching back and forth between oboe and English horn. Uh, Oboe has usually a faster, maybe a bit quicker vibrato. English horn practically always is very mellow. It's going to be a slower, long, or a wider amplitude in terms of vibrato. If
Yeah.
you think of it like with New World Symphony, I sometimes I forget I'm in oboe brain and I'll play it the way I want to play it on an oboe, and I have to
Yeah.
remind myself, or or my teacher will tell me, you're playing it like an oboist. Your vibrato is too fast. It feels too much is happening. So you really need to like sit back and really kind of have a much slower vibrato for it, warmer, not super energetic.
Nice.
Um, Trying to think of anything else that's approach is different. Um, Other than the reads, I think we kind of talked about that a little bit. And then maybe the only other thing is just adding more keys for the pitch, which I know I talked about a little bit, but I don't really add that many keys when I play oboe for adjusting pitch. But English horn, I feel like I'm always adding keys, especially in the upper register. So
Yeah.
always trying to find a new key system for those notes to kind of sit up nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Like forking the high B flat really helps a lot.
Yeah,
Stuff like
yeah.
Yeah. Even on the middle C, sometimes I'll add, I'll fork it or add other fingers. Yeah, I definitely do that a lot more on English horn.
Hmm.
For oboe, it's very rare,
Right.
if
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, nice. And I find that like one way, if I'm ever having to switch, I'll really focus on in my practice sessions, I'll play oboe and then pick up the English horn and play like really full range scales, and just
Hmm.
really giving it air and full support. And I find that that helps me find that sense of power, which I think takes a while to develop,
Yes.
for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I remember the first time I played it, and the feeling of blowing more air was like, in some ways it's very freeing because you don't have to hold back so much compared to
Right.
oboe. But at the same
Yeah.
time, it's also very scary because it's like, can I really? I can blow more? And it's like,
Yeah.
you want more?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
little bit of a dance, but obviously once you get familiar with it, it's becomes instant. But yeah, definitely niche.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. And that brings me to another question, which was, how did you get into playing English horn, or what drew you to playing that instrument?
Um, it's a funny story. The first time well, actually, if I take that back, the first time I played it was in undergrad, and I had played it in an opera, ironically, which was Hansel and Gretel.
That's
And we
awesome.
also happened to be doing, yeah, it was a great experience, and it was just enough so it was a little bit of English horn, but nothing too exposed. Um, I remember being horrified still because
Yeah.
I just felt so foreign to it. I didn't know like the pitch tendencies very well, and I remember, well, I was taking English horn class with Mr. Roger Rowe at the time, and we usually do big main excerpts, but I wasn't playing every day, so to speak. So
Yeah.
I went to him and I said, well, okay, well, what do I need to do? Because I only have like, I think it was like a week or something when they had released the roster. And so he said, well, he's like, you're going to play lots of scales and you're going to play lots of drones, play, play some stuff that we talked about in class, like some of the big excerpts, because you know how it's supposed to audibly sound, even though it might, because of like the pitch tendencies. And then that's what I did. So I did a lot of that. Um, and then after that, I kind of took a break again. And then I was at my master's and I just kind of happened to be swung into English horn as well. And at that time, the first time I had played it at Rice was Alpine Symphony. And the
Wow.
English horn part is a lot like the horn part. You like
Mm.
one of the main parts is the cow call, da dee da da dee da, and it was so fun. It was just like playing with like I felt like a French horn.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed it. And same idea. It was very freeing. I felt very like robust playing it, and I really love the fact that it's an individual sound because you don't have anyone else playing English horn with you.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and I kind of just fell in love with it, so I kind of just kept practicing it. Kind of kept it on the back burner. Um, and then yeah, that's pretty much it. I just kind of always had it ready to go, and now I play for it at my job, which I'm very thankful for. But I didn't know how much I loved it until I had the opportunity to play it full time, basically.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
What
one
about
thing I
yourself?
Oh, so I first played English horn when I was in college. No one really played, and we had this like not great school English horn, and we were playing Rock 2, and I
That's a
had,
good one.
yeah, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. So I was like, okay, sure, I'll do it. I remember the first rehearsal came up, and of course the like exposed, solo in the first movement came up, and I was like, all right, this is it.
Right.
And I remember just falling in love with that piece, and that piece really, really drew me to pursue the instrument more. Um, but
That's a
but like you
great, yeah.
mentioned, I really like the kind of the different pairings that the English horn gets. Like the English horn cello in La Mer, or the horns and like Heldenleben and stuff like that.
Hmm.
It's such a blast to play with other instruments that the oboe doesn't always get to play with. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's kind of this weird, like in the shadows, so it kind of blends with a little bit of everyone. And I love that,
yeah,
especially.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, nice. And I'm also a little bit curious about, since we're on the topic of careers, kind of, and how we got
Mhm.
into it, if you could talk a little bit about like your journey through school, and then how you ended up winning the jobs that you have now.
Yeah. Well, I was at Rice, and that's kind of like where I started playing a lot more English horn. Of course, I was still playing oboe. Um, After I was done, when I graduated from Rice, I had to decide whether or not I was going to stay in Houston and just kind of keep taking auditions, freelance, or I continue school. So I decided to continue school. I then went to Boston University, where I was with Mr. Frillo and Miss Gabriel,
Yeah.
and we didn't do as much English horn stuff, obviously there. I did some stuff privately, but I really worked a lot on my oboe playing while I was there. I took a lot of auditions, um, and I remember when the audition for HGO came up, I thought to myself, oh, I'm really really tired because it's the end of the year. I had just done a recital and a competition and God knows what else. And I thought, okay, well, should I take it? Should I not take it? Am I ready? And I thought, okay, I know Houston. I love, you know, going there, and I have, friends there, and I should take it. I should do it. Um, yeah, and it's just, and I will say that the auditions before I had made semifinals and auditions prior to that, but obviously I didn't win anything before that. And so sometimes you do feel a little bit defeated, but at the same time, you can learn so much from them too. So it was that year alone, especially, I learned so much because I just took so many auditions. Even if I didn't advance the first round, I learned something. Um, and so my only advice, I guess, for audition taking is just to keep taking them. It's really it. And I know it's, money and time commitment, and it's grueling. But you're getting better without even realizing it. And I know for myself, I always say, well, I felt so lucky. I felt, like it was out of the blue. But my coworkers and my colleagues around me always told me, well, I could hear you get better. And so I think that's important to remind yourself that, is that, your next job might be waiting around the corner that you don't even realize. So
Yeah.
pretty
I
much
love
it.
that. Yeah, that's great. I love that, you were like even debating taking this job. You were like, should I? And then you ended up doing it, and here you are. That's great.
Yeah, you never know. So you just got to keep pushing.
Yeah, nice. Cool. Well, what have you been working on recently in terms of rep?
With rep, well, I have been recently a little bit more busy with
That's good.
actual work.
Yeah.
um, I just, like I said, I just finished recording with HGO. That was with just oboe because we're still doing a little bit of minimal orchestra stuff. So we're doing things like Handel and Mozart, um, keeping it very early music, so it's much smaller.
Yeah.
That was great. Those kind of reads are always fun to make because you don't really need to worry about playing too soft for Mozart. It's more like you're playing a bunch of duets, basically, and
Yeah.
I love doing that. My coworker Elizabeth, who's the principal, is so wonderful to play with. So well, I always look forward to playing these kind of, is what I call duets.
Love that.
um, I will be going back to Amarillo, not next week, but the following week, and we're playing Prokofiev 1, and so that'll be
Fun.
fun. And then
Yeah.
I'll also be playing in June. I'll be playing Mahler 4, but that's with English horn. So I'm kind of getting ready for both again, which is great. Um, more different reads as usual. So I'm looking forward to figuring out what I'm going to make over there.
Nice. That's
Um,
very
Other than that, yeah. And then other than that, I've just been kind of playing etudes, playing uh, excerpts for myself, a lot of recording. I'm hoping to play a chamber concert at some point in the future. I'm trying to figure out some rep for that.
nice.
Um, yeah, this pandemic's definitely made me reach out outside of my little audition excerpt bubble. So it's been a interesting time to say the least.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's been a great time to learn new music. Um,
Yes,
yeah.
definitely.
Nice.
And what about yourself?
Well, my partner is a violinist, and so we get to play duets together, and it's really nice to have like someone I can play with in the house.
Hmm.
So we are, now that things are starting to open back up, we could maybe do like a either very distance or an outside something. We're thinking about putting together like a late spring, early summer recital. Um, so yeah, we're thinking about music for that. Um, and I'm looking into the Florence Price art songs,
Yes,
and
yes.
they're just gorgeous. And my teacher Mary Lynch recently played them in a recital, and so I was like so inspired. And I was like, I have to pick these up and start playing them. Um, so that's been really fun to explore. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. I watched part of that recital and I thought, wow, I was like, I mean, Mary Lynch always sounds fantastic.
yeah,
but
she
but
does.
those pieces but those pieces
Yeah,
were so awesome and I completely forgot about it. Reminding me that I would love to try to learn that rep too because I that's
yeah,
like rep that I've never heard of and I would love to play it and I want other people to hear it. So,
yeah,
yeah.
definitely. Yeah, and I didn't realize how
Yeah.
many there were. They're like I don't remember the total number, but it's like 40 or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's
it's
amazing that we don't know it. I mean, it's just, I
right,
mean, how many times do we hear, the Schumann romances or the Poulenc sonata?
right.
So it's it's like, oh, there's so much more rep that we have not looked at. So
Yeah, and I'm loving that we're getting into that more now. I think it's so
yes,
important, and yeah, um,
definitely.
and they're like pretty short little pieces, so it's great for a recital, so you don't feel like super stressed, playing them. I remember being in school and I did like an outside recital out of school my sophomore year, just kind of around the area. And I started the recital with playing the Schumann romances, all three of them. And I definitely learned my lesson that that was not how to start a recital. Uh,
It's hard work and it sounds so easy to everyone else, right?
right? Yeah, yeah. It was a lot.
Oh yeah. I I've had my fair share of regrets where I try to program too much, like for recital or for an outreach concert, and it's like, oh, I forgot that this is a lot of
Right.
not breathing.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's hard work, definitely.
Yeah. And like by themselves, you can do it, right? You can get through it, but then you piece it all together and it's like, whoa, that's a lot.
Yeah, right. It's like the elements and my reads and adrenaline and what I ate or something. It's just there's
Right.
always
Yeah.
something.
No, yeah. It feels like you're trying to get the stars to align so that you can make it work. Yeah.
Yes, that's what oboe making or oboe playing is definitely.
Yeah.
Are you just selecting some cane right now? That's what it looks
Yeah,
like.
that's all I'm doing. I feel like I never stop doing it. I'll do it and then gouge, and then I need to do it again immediately the next day. I don't know. It feels like a never ending with
Oh,
all of remaking.
definitely.
But
Yes.
what about you? What are you working on?
I just have an English horn blank here that I'm trying. It's actually I have to admit that this one's been sitting for a little bit longer than 2 days. Um, and I just never got around to it. I guess the reason why I didn't get around to it was I think the opening was just it looked a little too narrow, a little too small. But it's
Yeah,
starting to warm up here in Houston, so I'm thinking, well, I might as well try to give it a shot and see if I can get something out of it. And
nice.
if it doesn't work, then I can always wait another super humid rainy day and maybe it'll work then. So
Yeah, definitely. I love that.
yeah, definitely.
How many reads do you tend to have on hand like, when you have a big performance coming up?
Um, for English horn, not too many, maybe
Yeah.
like 5 or 6,
Mhm.
give or take. Oboe can be a lot. It depends. If it's an opera, maybe 12 or so,
Wow.
and they're always in different stages. So like some might be finished and some might be almost finished. Some might be like, oh, I'm probably gonna finish this when it's towards the end of the cycle.
Nice. Okay.
Um, when it's like Nutcracker season, that's when I have
Yeah.
a, a whole read box of everything. So, because
Yeah.
you need a lot for that. So,
Yeah. How
but
many Nutcracker shows do y'all do when it's in its prime?
oh my, it's sad because I can't remember at the top of my head since we didn't get to do it this past winter. But Pretty sure it's between 50 and 60
Wow.
shows. It's
Yeah.
something, it's a lot. Because quite often we do doubles. We start like right around Thanksgiving, and then we don't stop until right before the New Year. So it's their
Nice.
big big thing for the season, especially. And I love doing it too. I mean, it's a lot
Yeah.
of fun, and we make it fun with all these different you know, themes for every day when we bring snacks and stuff for the intermission. So try
Oh,
to
that's cute.
survive. Yeah.
Yeah.
So try to survive that.
Yeah. No, it's good music. And it can, can get tiring after, your 10th show. You start to get a little tired. Um,
Hmm.
it's, uh, it's like last year I was not expecting to miss playing it, and then I missed it. I was like,
Hmm.
I want to
I
play.
know. Yeah, it's definitely, it's so funny how that is, where it's like, well, normally I would be eating, and taking a nap and exhausted and then heading off again to play another show. And then instead I'm at home watching TV or something.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it was very hard to not do it this year. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, did you pick up any like quarantine hobbies?
Um, well, some of my friends know I am a huge baker, cook, whatever, anything food related, I'm probably gonna try
Nice.
to do it. So
Nice.
I love doing that. I've recently I've made adventures with some bread. The biggest problem was that I didn't have enough people eating my bread in terms of, who's nearby. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna wait to pick that up again when I have more people eating my carbs
Nice. Yeah. So
because
it's
I
not
can't eat
all on
carbs.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Some desserts. Yeah, just kind of honing in on some of those things. That's kind of my favorite hobby. Um, I've been spending more time outside, trying to exercise some more. I know that seems, you should do that all the time, but definitely trying to take care of myself is one of those things that I
Yeah.
forgot about when I was a student and kind of brought
Yeah.
that back when I started working. So I'm trying to remember to keep that part of my life despite work
Yeah.
continuing. Um, and then I can't think of anything else in particular. I have a lovely cat. She keeps me a lot of company.
Yeah.
um, she's
What's
going to
their name?
be very sad once I go back to work.
Nice. What's
So
her name?
her name is Gnocchi.
Oh, that's so cute.
I Yeah, everyone wanted me to name her Potato, and I kind of refused on that. So I my good friend recommended gnocchi, which is a potato pasta. So I thought,
Yeah.
well,
Nice
that's kind of
compromise. Yeah.
yeah, it's a nice compromise. So
Yeah.
so that's what happened.
Good. Nice.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, she loves it when I practice and make her read. She always goes straight to sleep, which I think is
Oh,
super
wow.
cute.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Awesome.
think she knows it's like mommy won't play with me right now, so I'm
Yeah.
just gonna enjoy the sound she makes. So
Nice.
she's
I
a
love
good
that.
she's a good read buddy. So
Yeah. That's great.
yeah. Um,
And what kind of oboe gouger are you using?
oh, for oboe, I specifically use my Furlough gouge.
Yeah.
Um, I've had it for quite a while. And then I do use my Inaleti specifically if I'm selling student reads. I unless it's for someone that I know that specifically needs like my furlough gouge for their
Yeah.
reads, I don't want to wear out the blade so quickly, so I do use my
Right.
Inaleti for student reads and stuff. And
Nice.
it's a quick read, and I think Inaleti can be reliable. But personally, I only use Furillo for myself. So yes,
Nice. Okay, cool.
yeah.
Have you ever tried the Farillo English horn gouge?
I have not actually, and I would love to get around to trying one of those. Um, I'm hoping to at some point go back to Boston and reconnect with Mr. Frillo and things like that. And I wanted to ask him, um, or I can always, ask one of my other colleagues that still sees him regularly, and I've been interested into looking into that. So
Yeah. I've been super curious because I'm not aware of anyone who has one, and I can't find any on available for sale online. But I know some people have to be using it, right? Um, But yeah,
Right, exactly. Yeah.
um,
I am unfortunately not one of those people, so but
yeah,
maybe someday. So,
yeah,
but yeah, I'm trying to think of because yeah, I really don't know of anyone that actually uses it, at least not from my knowledge. And maybe someone does in my friend circle and I just don't realize it. So,
yeah, yeah. But I mean, if it helps, English horn reads the way it helps oboe reads, then
oh
I'm
yeah,
would be all for that. That would be great.
most definitely, yes. I would prefer that definitely. But thankfully English horn can be a little bit more forgiving with the reeds, so that's at
Yeah,
least one redeeming quality.
yeah. And you also make reads for oboe duck.
Yes, I do. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah,
I specifically make English horn reeds for oboe duck. Um, I'm not sure if there's a way to specify for whose reed you're purchasing, but I send my reeds every month, um, and then they go out to some lucky client. So
nice.
hopefully,
That's awesome.
yeah. So hopefully they are enjoying them. But I I actually particularly love making English horn reeds more than oboe reeds for that reason that they're just more forgiving. I think they're
Yeah,
easier in some ways.
yeah,
So yeah, if anyone out there wants English horn reeds, definitely buy from Oboe Duck.
nice.
One
Yeah,
of those will be mine. So
yeah, yeah. And how many do you make like every month for them?
right now we're only doing three, and it just depends on their sales. Sometimes the owner will contact me and say, "Oh, I need another shipment of reeds," and so I just try to get them out as soon as I can. I try to always have blanks, kind of, or semi-finished reeds ready to go. So then that way, all I really need to do is just kind of finish them up within a couple days, and then send them out. So yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, I love their model of using multiple great reed makers um, to offset the the massive number of reeds
Yes,
to make. Yeah,
definitely. Yes.
I think that was something that when I started my reed business, I was very unprepared for the the quantity that was to come. Um, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's one of those things that I right now I really only sell besides Obo Duck, I really only sell to maybe a couple students that are in the local area.
yeah,
Just because I don't want to get swamped like that. And I know right now it seems like it's, fine because most of us aren't playing full time right now, but I
right.
know once things go back to normal, it's going to be a challenge to juggle all those read orders. So I try to focus on my own first before I become swamped in other people's.
Yeah, yeah. How would you say that your English horn reeds compare to others that you've tried? Like, would you say yours are tend to be on the lighter side, or
Um, I don't know how to answer that question just because I haven't tried too many reads.
okay, yeah,
And especially now, given a pandemic, I haven't really tried that many people's reads.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but from what I've when I talk to my colleagues that play English horn and I talk about the similarities that we have, quite often we do have very similar things like, oh, like this is usually where my crow is at, or oh, like this is my tie length, or my shape and how I scrape it based on that shape. So I have found a lot of similarities with that. The general gist is what I get is that it's you want to read that's just not too much opening, but not too small. But you want it to kind of be a little bit of a powerhouse so you can really blow into it. That's like the
yeah,
thing that I feel like most English horn players look for.
yeah, definitely.
Um, Yeah, and then of course, ease. Like, of course, you want to have responsive low notes, responsive all notes. But
Yeah,
that's usually the case. So,
nice. Yeah.
is that how you feel with your reads yourself? Like, do you feel like, have you tried other people's reads for English horn and stuff?
Yeah, I would say mine tend to be slightly heavier.
Hmm.
But I sometimes find that to be especially true when I'm trying to the hall that I play in typically is quite dead, so I feel like I need to
Mm.
get a read that can really I can really blow into. Um, so yeah, I've been experimenting more with, I mean, and honestly, in the past year, I've only been making reads in my room, right? So, Lord knows what they actually sound like in a hall, but yeah. So I would say, but I do look for that kind of powerhouse read that I can really give air to.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, I definitely empathize with the playing in my room or my apartment, I guess, all the
Yeah,
time because I just this week when I went to go record at HGO, I mean, I'm playing oboe, but I forgot. It was like, oh yeah, this hall like really kind of sucks it up because we were on stage
yeah,
when we're normally in the pit where it's a little bit more resonant. And so I forgot, like, oh yeah, I have to make reads that are a little bit more, they project a little bit more because I'm not playing from my little apartment anymore.
yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah,
yeah, definitely an adjustment period for sure.
yeah. It's so weird. Yeah. Well, I guess the last question that I'll ask is,
Mhm.
what advice do you have for young read makers or beginner read makers?
Um, the best piece of advice, it kind of goes like a pendulum. It kind of goes both ways. I have students that sometimes don't want to push themselves because they're so worried about making a mistake, like
Yes.
taking off a corner or scraping out the spine or, whatever. And then they never scrape enough. And I'm
Yeah.
constantly trying to tell them, like, just scrape more because right now your reed is not vibrating. And then I have students that go the other side where they just kind of hack away at the whole thing and say, well, my
Yeah.
reed doesn't work. And it's like, well, that's
Yeah.
because there's no corners on it anymore.
Yeah.
And so those kids I want to tell them to, rein it in. Um, but the real, for both those things, it comes down to just experimenting, being willing to make mistakes, especially right now since most of us are still home. Um, you can have that liberty and freedom to make a read. But it's like, well, what if I take out the spine in the back? Or what if I, you know, don't put an inception in it? I just kind of make it a little bit more less defined.
Yeah.
Those are the times where you get to learn so much and you don't have to worry about other people listening to you or if you have like a jury or a concert or something and have to have a read right away.
Yeah.
Um, because I I definitely think that most of my undergrad years was spent in my read room just making tons and tons and tons of reads and always going a little bit too far to the right and too far to the left and eventually you'll hit in the middle and kind of have some rhythm. And there are times where I don't also. I mean, if the
Yeah.
weather drastically changes and I have nothing, that's life too. And that's, at least I can be quick on my feet, but having that room to forgive yourself and push yourself is really important, definitely.
Nice. That is great advice. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's a long journey of read making. So
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you, Mayu, so much for joining me. I learned a lot, and I know our viewers did as well. So, yeah, we
yeah,
appreciate it.
yeah. Thanks so much for having me. Hopefully my rambling made some sense, and
Lots
it's
of
nice
sense.
to learn
Yeah.
a couple. It was nice to learn things from you too, and I'm looking forward to hearing comments from other people after this is out. So looking
Yeah.
forward to it.
Yeah. Me too. All right.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah. Best wishes.
Yeah. You too. Take care.